All right. Hello, everyone. Today is April 1st, 2020. This is the SIG Cloud Provider bi-weekly meeting. Oh wait, let me share my screen. All right. So we have a pretty light agenda. Not too many folks on today, so we may postpone the backlog grooming as I mentioned before. But let's just quickly go through the sub-project updates. Start with AWS because I see Nick Turner on the call. Nick, do you want to give us any updates on the AWS provider?
I don't think I have too much. Just we'll be based off 118, but other than that, I don't think I have anything.
Sorry, I missed the last thing you said.
I said we'll be doing a release pretty soon in the next week or two, since 118 is out now. But other than that,
cool. Okay. Okay, I see Richard put no updates for IBM. Kendall, do you have any updates on the OpenStack provider you want to add here? I don't hear you.
Do I have bad audio?
Yeah, now you're good.
So the thing I have from him was like a little while ago, but we also haven't had a meeting recently. So it was just that we're removing the OpenStack auth plugin from Client Go, and that PR was under review. I'm trying to find the link to it, but I can't. As soon as I do, I will put it in the agenda.
Did you say to Client Go or from Client Go?
From.
Okay. All right, I'll give a quick update on vSphere. We actually canceled our meeting today. The only thing we're working on is we added load balancer support for our networking platform called NSXT. So that is alpha and yeah, actively being developed. And then we're doing some work to explore like YAML configuration instead of INI. I know most of the providers are still on INI, but I think given everyone's familiar with YAML, we should start investigating that. But aside from that, those are the two things. And then extraction migration work. I'm doing a bunch of work to and we're doing work to how do I word this? Doing work so that only case.io cloud provider, so that is the only dependency needed to build a CCM. So I'm doing a bunch of work to remove dependencies in the cloud controllers and the cloud controller manager binary. That way we can stage it all into the single cloud provider repo. And then if you need to build a CCM, you just import that repo, and it should. I mean, it's still gonna pull in like Client Go, API machinery, like all the core stuff in Kubernetes, but it shouldn't create nasty dependency loops that you get when you import Kubernetes. So this is something I really want to get done for 119. I made some pretty good progress in 118, but not enough to push it through. So 119, I'm hoping to see this, and hopefully it'll make building CCMs a lot easier. And then Nick, did you want to give a update on Atima? Did you want to say something?
Yeah, just sorry, just a quick question. Did I understand correctly with 1.19, if everything goes as planned, you won't need to vendor k/k anymore?
Yeah, that's the hope. Unless you've done stuff, unless you're importing stuff like outside of just the cloud, what the cloud provider does, and you have imported KK for other reasons. But yeah, I'm really hoping that we'll move everything into the staging cloud provider repo, including the cloud controller manager binary and all the controllers and the config structs and everything. And you wouldn't have to depend directly on Kubernetes.
Nice. That sounds very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll keep you updated on that one.
Cool.
Yeah, and then Nick, do you want to give an update on the credential provider?
Yeah, I was just going to say that that's awesome work, Andrew. So I, based on the changes that we were going to make to the KEP on your suggestion, Andrew, I'm working on a PR for that. I am getting close. There's not that much there. The one thing that I wanted to add was just like add the move to staging into the KEP itself, because I actually started working on that in the PR. So I should have that next couple of days, definitely by the end of the week, for review, the KEP PR at least. And then, yeah, in terms of code, took a break from it, but this week started getting back to it, was doing the move to staging, and then I still have some comments to address on the actual code PR as well. So I'll probably get a little deeper into that next week.
Awesome. Yeah, I was hoping to get to that last week, but I couldn't. So yeah, but yeah, awesome. Looking forward to the KEP. Let me know when it's open. Let's try to get it in early so that we can just focus on the code afterwards.
Yeah, definitely expect end of this week at the very latest.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so just go straight into the agenda. Supporting running multiple CCMs concurrently and conflict-free. Timo, I'm guessing you added this one.
Right, that's for me. Yeah. So, right, let me give you a bit of context on what this is about. I've had this one, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. So this is about. So I phrased it as running them concurrently, but the use case we at DO, I work at DO, and I'm responsible for our CCM, really have is to be able to run automated end-to-end tests for a CCM under tests. And the tricky part that we have today is that, of course, you need some kind of cluster where you deploy your CCM instance into. And I know that probably many folks use kubeadm or something else, but what we at DO mostly do is we test our like bleeding edge stuff on DOKS clusters, on instances of our managed service. We do this for instance, for our CSI stuff, our CSI driver, and ideally we'd like to do that for the CCM as well. But the challenge we have today, or see today, is that by design, as far as I understood, is that if you have a cluster where a CCM instance already runs, like for instance, if we spin up a production ready DOKS cluster that comes with a pre-built CCM already, of course, you can't have another CCM run there as well, because I think the design assumes, or the architecture assumes, that whatever CCM is running in there kind of takes responsibility for all objects that are implemented by the interface, like nodes and load balancers and whatnot. And that makes it tricky. And yeah, what we'd ideally like to have is this ability to, very similar to how you can test CSI drivers or different ingress controllers. There's this notion of specifying a class to have them run in parallel and kind of partition the object space with regards to a certain part that are managed by a CCM A, the bleeding edge one, let's say, and a partition space B, if you will, that are managed by, let's say, the pre-built CCM, and run whatever kind of end-to-end test you want to run, and rest assured that the right CCM will take care of things. And when I filed the issue, after I filed the issue, Andrew pointed me at this PR 73175 that was out already and closed at the time, and there's also a tracking issue in the cloud provider repo, which I think goes in a similar direction, though the use case was slightly different. With that PR, I think the primary focus was on supporting or the ability to add nodes to a cluster that are not managed, like unmanaged nodes. And I think virtual kubelet was the specific use case there. So there was a lot of talking about nodes specifically. Nodes is definitely the thing that I have in mind as well. But in particular, load balancers is also something that we want to test, because in the OCCM right now, we support nodes and load balancers. So these are the two resource types that we'd like to be able to test in our own managed clusters. Yeah, so that's kind of the context. Maybe, and I guess I should have said that up front, maybe the way people, especially out of tree providers, test their CCM implementations, maybe there's a good way that I wasn't aware of. It just felt very natural for us to use our own managed products. But if there's none, then basically the discussion I want to kick off is if this PR that was closed at the time, I think it was just, they just lost traction. I don't think there was a strong rejection reason, or more design was just needed. I'd like to basically talk about if there's a way to resume the work that happened there, and maybe see what kind of twists we need in order to cover this extended use case that I described. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think, like, based on previous discussions, like what Jordan had recommended was a label selector on resources that defines like which CCM owns this resource. I wouldn't be opposed to a cap or like or running with that idea and seeing where it goes. Like, I think the biggest thing to consider is that whatever thing we add, like its default or whatever we do as default should be what it is today. So like if there's no label on a resource that specifies which CCM, and if the CCM is not given what that label value should be, then that CCM watches all resources, right? But I think the bare minimum solution would be like you give a CCM like an owner ID or something, and then if it has an owner ID, when it reconciles any resource like nodes or services, it checks a label or an annotation for some well-known label key and the value matching with the owner ID is, and then it goes off and does its thing. Even at VMware internally, we have some people asking for this feature too, and we never really went through with it because I didn't really. It didn't seem. I thought it was just something that we wanted, and not a lot of other people wanted. So, but if there's other cloud providers who actually think this is going to be useful, I wouldn't be opposed to starting with the whole like label ownership idea and seeing where that goes.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds good to me as well. I did like the label selector idea. I think that could work or would work for the O. Cool. All right. So yeah, if I understood you correctly, then the next step would be to start a cap and I guess gather some feedback and opinions on that.
Yeah, and what's nice is that the interface already supports like a cluster ID, or like I think the CCM has a flag called cluster ID. So there's the kube controller manager, and that's used for, I think it's mainly used for like tagging on AWS. So you can like match a resource to a cluster and you don't accidentally touch a resource in another cluster. But we can use that same flag, a cluster ID flag, and use that as the owner ID. So that might be actually that could be breaking for AWS. But anyways, but like we can start, like we can explore ideas on that route. But yeah, feel free to open a cap, or if you want to like open a PR with like a bare minimum implementation, and then that can help us kind of guide the discussion, and then we can move on to cap. That works too.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. In my mind, at least, I hope I'm not underestimating the effort, but in my mind, this should be like a PR should be doable within a day or so, and shouldn't be too big. The cluster ID idea is interesting as well. I know that cluster idea, we talked about that some time ago, a few months ago, that this was in a kind of odd state, because I think it's marked as Like it's supposed, if you don't add the flag, you get a warning on startup saying that you should support it. But I know there's also this issue where we talk about to what extent this is still needed. And I think somebody from AWS chimed in back then as well. And it seemed like it wasn't really used anymore. But yeah, if this is an opportunity to maybe bring it back to life, yeah, then why not? We can look into that. But I guess that's a detail. Whatever ID we're going to use.
Yeah, or if not cluster ID, cluster name. I guess that's the most. I think cluster name is what I meant. But cluster ID is also a weird thing. Like, I think we deprecated it because it's only used on Amazon, and but like I don't see it going anywhere because you can't really remove it without breaking a bunch of users. So it's in this weird state. Maybe we should undeprecate it because probably not going to go anywhere. But yeah, I think starting with cluster name is a good start because I know cluster name is already propagated to all the controllers. So we just need to agree on a well-defined label key and then go with that.
Okay, I'll have to think about it. But cluster name is really the name of the cluster, right? I'm wondering if that is what we want.
Oh, you're right. Oh.
It would be something like, I don't know, the idea would be production and under test. I don't know, you know.
Oh yeah, you're right. That's a good point.
In that regard. Yeah, we can, the kind of, the idea that, yeah, I don't know. I think I need to spend more time on this.
Well, okay, right. So I think what we want is like the cluster name flag. Like you can specify a cluster name flag on different, like if you run 2 CCMs, like you can specify different values for cluster name. But I admit it's confusing because if it's the same cluster, why would we give it 2 separate cluster names? But essentially, like this is a flag that you can kind of trick the CCM into saying it's a different cluster and have it only watch resources that match the cluster name. Or a label that specifies cluster name, but I agree, maybe we need a new flag. But I would, if you're gonna POC it or something, you can use this as kind of like a way to demo how we would do this, because this flag is already kind of being propagated everywhere.
And what's cluster name used for today?
It's literally just passed down to a bunch of stuff, and like if you look at the load balancer interface.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, it takes that as a parameter. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. All right. Yeah, I can try to POC something based on cluster name and see how it goes.
Cool. Sounds good. Okay, and the next one is yours too.
Right. That's mine as well. That was filed by a colleague of mine, and this is something that I'm less sure about if kind of the proposal I made makes sense or not. Again, some context up front. The context is that there's the let me make sure I have the ticket open as well. Right. So there's this parameter in CCM, or 2 parameters actually. It's min retry delay and max retry delay, which basically defines the interval in which delays happen or retries happen, and of course that's an exponential delay, I believe, or it at least increases until it hits the maximum. And we have one use case where, so usually we are completely fine with that, and the kind of the upper limit as well, because that's what you use if you say you hit an error repeatedly. Of course, in that case, you want that that exponential backoff to drive you to the maximum. But for certain cases, we would rather have something more aggressive, and maybe not something that backs off, maybe a static one. And the use case that we have is if we provision load balancers, cloud load balancers at DO in the DO cloud, because the way we do this, and this is maybe the part where you're doing it wrong, and I'd be curious to hear your input or feedback. The way we are basically provision an LB, which at DO, similar to probably other cloud providers as well, it takes a bit of time after you do the create request. It takes a bit of time before the LB comes back to you and says, I'm active, you can use me. What we do is we return an error to to the controller, to the cloud provider controller, so that the controller does the backoff for us and calls into the interface again, where we do another check and see if the LB is active by now. And the reason we're not doing this retry within the ensure load balancer function is that to my understanding, this kind of blocks all other operations. Like if you're already basically running a reconcile loop and you're basically blocking and you're waiting for something to happen, like an LB to become active, you can't do things like delete the LB or change the configuration or something, which is why we decided to back off. But in the case where an LB, where we're just waiting for an LB to get active, this incurs some extra delay that's not really necessary. Like if we're at this kind of spot where an LB would be ready, but the exponential backoff has already driven us into the upper limit, if you will, a number of extra seconds or even minutes can pass by before the LB actually becomes active, because we have to wait for the controller to make that next call out into our interface implementation. And that's the problem that we have. And the question we have around this is there a way to maybe try to make a differentiation between delays that are just progress delays, that's how I call them in the ticket, and on the other hand, failure delays, where we're really hitting a problem and an exponential backoff is actually justified. That all being said, I'm wondering if we're doing the right thing. Maybe the decision we took to let the controller do the backoff and retry for us, maybe that's wrong. Maybe there's a better way. But given this kind of setup that we had, filing this ticket seemed to make sense, at least to get some input on that question or request.
Have you confirmed though? So I have to double check the code to make sure. But are you 100% sure that the operation is blocking? Like if you did 2 load balance operations and the first one blocked for a minute, like for sure the second one doesn't come up? Because I thought there was like we have a work queue and it's consumed, it has like concurrency of 5 or something.
Oh, okay, interesting.
But I could be wrong. Like I'm just assuming that. I need to check the code.
I was looking at the work queue some time ago, and I thought my interpretation was there's actually only one update happening, but maybe it was half trying to understand and half assuming, because that's how CSI does it as well. You can run concurrently, but yeah, that's a fair point. I'm not sure if you can check right away. Then this is a non-issue, I guess.
Like yeah, it's. I think. I mean, if you can test it and prove that it blocks, then I think we should definitely. I'd be open to adding like different error types for the service. So like, you know, a retriable error or whatever, or like a progress error, whatever you want to call it. And then we can update the service controller to, like if it's like whatever the provider returns, like based on the error type, we can change the controller behavior based on that. I'd be open to that, but I think it's worth validating at least if you have time. If you can write a quick test or validate that it is for sure blocking, then that'd be great.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. I can take a look and make sure that the assumption that I did maybe too easily is actually right. I can do that. Cool.
Okay, awesome. Thanks.
Great. Thank you too.
Okay. Yeah, and then I think I'm gonna push the 119 backlog moving forward till the next meeting. But if folks can, we have our backlog here. We have our backlog here, so I'll probably start just moving stuff around, or we can push it to the next meeting. But if folks wanted to assign themselves to any issues here, or they want to bump the priority on anything, please comment on the issues, and that's what we're going to use to drive some of the work we're doing for 119. All right. All right, cool. There's nothing else. Let's just end now, or did anyone have any last minute things they want to chat about? All right. See you all in 2 weeks then.
See ya.
Thanks, Andrew. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Stay
Bye.
safe.